Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the October 27, 2025 work session of the York County School Board. We appreciate everybody's flexibility and understanding as this meeting was rescheduled from October 13th due to weather. Thank you for joining us as we continue our important work and discussions on behalf of our students, staff, and community. We have quite a few presentations this evening, so we're going to start off with our pupil-teacher ratios. Dr. Carroll, would you like to introduce our first presenter?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Goodwin. Dr. David Wrights, Chief Human Resources Officer, has the first three reports tonight. And the first one will provide an update on current FY26 pupil-teacher ratios. Dr. Wrights.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. Ms. Goodwin, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to present the annual report on pupil-teacher ratios, employee retention, and new hires. Tonight's presentation supports two strategic priorities. A supportive culture is paramount in attracting and retaining highly effective talent. Our two areas of focus are learning environment and working conditions. A strong connection exists between learning environments, working conditions, and organizational culture, and these directly affect how well a school division can attract, support, and retain highly effective talent. The quality of the learning environment and working conditions directly shape culture. When they are positive, they create a supportive, growth-oriented atmosphere where staff feel valued. This not only retains highly effective employees, but also enhances the division's reputation, making it more attractive to our top talent. This connection is noted through research published by the National Center of English Statistics, Gallup Workplace Reports, and SHRM. The Virginia Standards of Quality set forth guidelines for assigning licensed instructional personnel in a manner that produces school-wide or division-wide ratios of students in average daily membership to full-time equivalent teaching positions, as well as designated individual class size limits for specific grade levels. This chart is a summary of the most current SOQ class size guidelines. School boards shall report pupil-teacher ratios that include resource teachers in the same annual report. Any classes funded through the voluntary kindergarten through third grade class reduction program shall be identified as such classes. At this time, we have Magruder and Yorktown Elementary included in this reduction program for FY26. Any classes having waivers to exceed the requirements of this subsection shall be identified, and schools shall be identified. However, the data shall be compiled in a manner to ensure the confidentiality of our teachers and pupil identities. Here are the elementary school pupil-teacher ratios for the school year. The first column, actual pupil-teacher ratio, which does not include resource teachers, has a range of ratios from 20 to 24 to 1 with a division average of 21.8. Our division average for FY25 was 22. In elementary and secondary schools, resource teachers include, but not necessarily are limited to, our music, art, PE, STEM, and technology. Administrators, school counselors, and librarians are excluded per VDOE. The column on the right shows the pupil-teacher ratios for resource teachers. These ratios range from 15 to 18 to 1 with a division average of 16.2 to 1, which is well below the limits of 24 to 1 in grades K through 3 and 25 to 1 in grades 4 and 5. The Department of Education Standards of Quality require school divisions to assign instructional staff in a manner that produces school-wide ratios of students in average daily membership to full-time equivalent teaching positions no more than 21 to 1 in middle school and high school, as a division-wide ratio of 24 to 1 for English classes. In secondary schools and higher education, it is best practice for English courses offerings to include opportunities in all areas of the English language, such as literature, public speaking, creative writing, journalism, poetry, philosophy, theater, and playwriting, along with psychology, in addition to the traditional English language arts classes. Specific course offerings have some variability by school due to the student interest in the program of studies. All classes that fall in these categories are considered when determining pupil-teacher ratios. As you can see, school-wide average pupil-teacher ratios range from 11 to 15 to 1, with a division average of 14.1 to 1. This is below the SOQ guidance of 21 to 1. School-wide averages for English classes range from 15 to 17, with a division average of 15.8 to 1, and this is below the SOQ guidance of 24 to 1. For high school, school-wide average pupil-teacher ratios range from 12 to 18 to 1, with a division average of 15.7 to 1. This is below the SOQ guidance of 21 to 1. School-wide averages for English classes range from 12 to 22 with a division average of 19.6 to 1, and this is below the SOQ guidance of 24 to 1. Per the standards of quality, families must be notified if their student is assigned to a class that exceeds the maximum limit. At this time, we have 5 PE classes at Tabb Middle School that exceed the maximum of 35 students. Letters to those families were mailed the week of October 7th. These classes are over the limit by less than 5 students each. And I'm going to stop there before I go on to my next section if anyone has any questions.
I have one. Why are they so much higher at Tabb Middle for the PE?
The PE classes, well, currently right now, Tabb Middle is probably our largest middle school, and the way that the classes have been divided by those teachers, it just exceeded, and we're talking 1 or 2 students above that 35 ratio. And that would just mean adding another teacher would then take the ratios down, so sending the letter home just assures us the opportunity that parents know that, and we got no feedback from our parents that they weren't okay with that.
What about feedback from the teachers having that larger class size, especially for PE?
We have not received any feedback from those teachers, nor has the administration, that those class sizes were too large for them. Typically, our class sizes for PE range around 35 anyway, so having 1 or 2 extra is typically they're able to handle.
Have they been asked?
I haven't specifically gone out and asked them. And then they also
Might be a
have,
good idea just to get their viewpoint as opposed to just assuming they would let you know.
and a lot of times what happens, Ms. Fairman, is whenever a class size is above the 35, the principal will send in a para to help in those classes. So just transitioning those paras into those classes that are a little bit higher to provide support too. But
Is there a way to identify that on here?
we do not do that, no. It's only the
Can we?
teachers. We could look at that, yes.
And I would, excuse me, I would add that each year it's common that we would have some classes that go over, and 6th grade PE and band classes are usually the culprits. And sometimes we've had it with some higher end math where we might be over just 1 or 2, because when you're dealing with secondary classes, if you add another teacher, then your ratios are going to plummet. So if you're looking, I'd have to do the math, but let's say you're talking about 3 sections of geometry and you've got 95 kids. Well, if you have 3 sections, you're going to have 31, 32. If you put a 4th one in there, now you're going to be into the low 20s. So it's kind of, it's a balancing act.
And I would have to point out, we've done this over the years I've been on the school board. We're kind of right on that cusp of, you probably need one, but not quite yet. But maybe the next year with the enrollment increases, then we need one and it goes back down again. So it's an ebb and flow on that that I've seen over the years.
Like Dr. Carroll said, it's typically our PE classes that are those
Right.
ones that are
Exactly.
go over.
But once again, I would still like if we can reach out to specifically ask the teachers, if they have, positives or negatives, feedback from what they are experiencing with the larger classes, as well as identifying which ones have a para to help as another adult in the class.
Sure, I can do that for you.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Mm-mm.
If you are following along with us on board docs, I'm going to the next presentation, which is employee retention, and I'm going to start on slide 5. Let's transition to retention, lateral moves, and new hires. Employee retention refers to YCSD's ability to prevent turnover. Research shows it takes 1 to 2 years for a new hire to match the productivity of the employee who's left. YCSD monitors overall and new hire retention rates as well as the reasons employees separate from the division. 82% of our operating budget, which is approved by the board, supports the employee compensation package. This key performance area, the KPI, is very important because it reflects the efforts of the board's support for compensation leading to staff retention. Our retention rate for FY25 was 87%, which shows an increase in retention from FY24's 83 retention rate. We believe the contributing factor to our continuous improvement with retention is our efforts in getting feedback from our new hires. Focus groups are held at all sites twice a year to gather information on how their experiences have been. We're starting those actually this week up until the week of Thanksgiving with all new employees. Our staffing department also sends out touch point surveys, and this is in conjunction with the monthly pulse surveys, providing data on how we can improve down to the granular level. For licensed employees, the number of separations have reduced each year when we look at a 3-year trend data. For FY25, 97 licensed employees separated. For FY24, 125 licensed employees separated. And for FY23, 144 licensed employees separated. As you can see, employees separating for an alternative employment has continued to decline. Notice a slight uptick in the working conditions chart. With fewer employees leaving, the denominator is lower, which does impact the weight of each response. Our efforts to gather data on the YCSD experience and then using that data to make adjustment keeps us moving forward in a positive manner. Research shows 47% is the average industry turnover rate for the first 3 years. When you drill down through research, education turnover rate for the first 3 years is 39%. For non-licensed employees, FY25 had the lowest number of separations when we look at a 3-year trend. In FY25, 167 employees separated, FY24, 219 employees separated, and FY23, 172 employees separated. So I'm going to stop in that section before I go on to the next part of my presentation and ask for any questions.
So would you attribute that decline because you're asking for more feedback from people and just letting them know that you hear them?
I think it contributes to it that we ask for feedback through our surveys, and then we take that feedback and show that our employees that we are taking them seriously and we are correcting the things and taking, their concerns to the next level and correcting it.
I also think the retention, a lot could be attributed, well, I don't know how much percentage-wise, but what was done with special ed.
Oh my gosh.
Extra training that was given.
I'm so glad you brought that up because our special education department and the Department of Instruction has done the boot camps, and they do monthly PD with our special education teachers, giving them the support that they need, which in turn retains them because they feel supported.
Yeah,
You are
that's
correct.
a big, we had such a low turnover in that
We did.
area, so
Yeah.
it's working.
I agree.
I have a question on these documents, unless I'm missing something on here, maybe it's on here somewhere else. Is there a way to identify, you have the number of how many employees separated, but can you put a percentage of the overall listing of, like, what is 97, what is the percentage overall? We know it's 90, the number is 97.
Oh, gotcha.
Turnover percent?
Yes,
Percentage.
what they have at the bottom of the chart here, they have the percentages based on reasons for leaving. But I was looking to see what the actual percentage was, like what 144 left in 22 and 23.
So you would know what percentage of that of our
Percent over
workforce?
overall.
Licensed employees.
We'd have to go back and look at total employees each of those years
Right.
because that number fluctuates.
Mm.
Right.
But roughly high 800s.
Yes,
is our instructional staff, or
I think it's more closer to 9.
900, so you're gonna be just over 10%.
Yeah, I was gonna say 10 to 13% about this
Well,
guessing, but it would be nice to see that, just so that we have a comparison of this was the number, this is what was overall.
well, but then it's also gonna be impacted by the number of military moves that we have, you know.
Right, but it's just still
that are different
getting a
from year to
picture
year.
of
It's still overall.
overall percentage, yeah.
That's why we include those reasons, so that you
Right.
can see that. I think what's important is the relative change in that those numbers have been going down.
Yeah,
Yes.
So to get under 100, we haven't been under 100 in a while.
that's
So
really,
that's-
really good.
yeah.
So again, we're going to the next section. And if you're following along, we're going to go to slide 5 under the new hires and lateral moves PowerPoint. Research shows recruiting and retaining highly effective teachers is directly linked to student success. YCSD monitors the number of employees on the teacher salary scale hired annually and their average years of experience when hires, as well as regional employment trends such as how many of our licensed employees are separating from us to work at other local school divisions and where new hires are coming from. We have seen a slow decline in the experience of our new hires that they bring to us to YCSD. This decrease in the hiring of experienced teachers is related to national data, indicating fewer people are entering the teaching profession. FY 25, 29 of our new hires came to us from local school divisions and 10 left YCSD for another local school division, which is down from the previous year of 17 left at that time to work at another school division. Every employee who separates from YCSD must complete an exit survey as part of their separation process. As part of this process, employees have an option to select a face-to-face interview with the HR staff, and the information gathered from the survey or interview is used to help guide next steps with retention and employee satisfaction. Here you can see an overview of where our experienced new hires are coming from. HR implements various strategies annually to ensure we attract and retain the most qualified employees. We continue to offer several ways to gather data from employees. We constantly analyze new hiring trends in order to address hard-to-fill positions. Based on the data from surveys, we developed an HR toolkit, and we put it out to our principals and administrators this past summer at our Leadership Academy. And this toolkit is a live document hiring managers have access to and includes valuable resources on how to hire effectively, such as a flow chart and strategies for attracting top talent. For example, it offers guidance on how to welcome and onboard new employees into their roles in a way that shows genuine care. And this approach demonstrates that onboarding isn't just a one-and-done process. It's about creating a lasting supportive experience that sets the tone for long-term success and retention. I do want to just highlight real quick something that we have been doing most recently as far as our HR efforts to proactively go out into our workforce. So last Friday, we went out to the V3 Executive Forum in Richmond, and we sent 2 of our HR representatives out for that. And that's an event that celebrates employers and their commitment to veteran hiring. And so we went out there to just show our support for our veteran employees and also try to even recruit some of the veterans to come to YCSD. Also on Friday, we went to the Hampton Roads DoD Skill Bridge Expo in Virginia Beach at Oceana. And that is where employees from the service are transitioning out of the military into another career. And so we were able to get there and get some valuable employees to possibly come to YCSD. On October 28th, we have the Talent Advantage Strategic Planning event at the Hive in Virginia Beach. And so again, that is for our area's HR leaders to go out and talk to our military families and those military people that are actually, again, transitioning back into careers. November 5th, we have a pop-up job fair from 4 to 6 at Yorktown High School. And November 13th, we have a networking and hiring fair at the Riverview Event Center in Hampton. And that is sponsored and hosted by our Virginia Veterans Services. So just some of the efforts that we are doing to help support our military as they transition into the workforce.
Does the Troops to Teachers program still exist, or does it have a different name, or?
No, we still, Troops to Teachers operation, yes, we get a lot of those. And we also do the Operation Socrates, and that is for our non-licensed military that want to come in, not necessarily for a licensed position, but a non-licensed position. We participate in that too. For the third quarter of FY25, from July to September, we had 4 active duty working for us, 14 veterans, 7 were female vets, and 26 spouses. Wellness activities also help encourage our employees through the engagement to stay, and our HR department is working collaboratively to prepare. We are all in the HR department, all 11 of us are preparing for the SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resources Management, and we are taking that test, and that gained experience through becoming certified, SHRM certified, will increase our ability to serve our employees even better. And that is all of the slides for me tonight.
My last question is, can you help me understand a little more about the national data that you were saying that's influencing the age of the experience of the new hires that's coming in?
So we are, so the national data stating that people just aren't going into the teaching profession. So those that are coming out of college don't have the experience. And so that's where I was trying to relate it to the fact that our new hires are coming to us that need a little bit more support because they're not coming to us with a lot of experience. And also too, we are hiring provisional teachers that aren't coming with the education that we typically have through an education program. They're coming to us with different degrees and they're not coming to us with experience at all.
Could you explain that provisional idea, the provisional licensing, so everybody understands, please?
So I can give you an example of a provisional. So if you come to us and if you have a degree in business or finance or something that's not education related, we can look at what you have and we can take your credentials, and everyone's different, so I can't pigeonhole everyone into one spot. But we can take those credentials and your degree and we can allow you to take tests and we can give you the supports that you need to get a provisional license to go into a classroom to teach a specific subject or level. And yes, necessarily they may not have the educational background that we have and the training that we have, but through the instruction department and through many different resources, we support those teachers to be successful in the classroom who aren't our traditional teaching program.
Do you have a percentage of how many provisional teachers we have and how many?
I had a feeling you'd ask me that, Ms. Fairman, tonight. And I didn't add it up, but I can get that for you because it's increasing. Because in order for us to have teachers in the classroom, we do have to go to the provisional route simply because we don't have teachers going into the education field.
So as for FY26, we're gonna have new hires, actually we have 97 new hires compared to 2,442, so that's a significant decline. Does that mean we're retaining more people, we have less open spaces?
Correct.
Okay.
So like Ms. Goodman was saying, we're retaining them because of the supports we have in place, that we're hearing how we can support you. And we're also providing them with the PD to be successful in the classroom, which in turn allows them to want to stay.
But that's really important to understand that those career switchers, or the few that we can get straight out of school, they're pulling that average number down. We used to average over 8 years experience. That's gone down 3 years in a row. So it's going to require more resources to give the proper professional development to make sure that those teachers are teaching to the York standard.
What you find, and I don't need a number percentage, I'm just asking like for your provisional hires, when you give them the support and everything you put in place place, do you find that they're overall taking off, doing well, most of those provisionals?
Most of them are doing well, yeah. Yes, they also are, I think they struggle more with the classroom management.
Mhm.
And so that's when our current administrators need to step in and provide those supports. It's not a lot as the content itself, but it's the management piece. And once they get under control, then the world is their oyster pretty much. I mean, as far as teaching and getting buy-in from kids, if you have that management within the classroom.
Well, and this scenario that we're looking at right now is the best it's gonna be.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the future, it's just gonna go down as far as the teacher shortage is gonna get worse.
Yeah.
And the provisionals, I think it's probably inverse of what it was 6 or 7 years ago,
Absolutely.
you know?
Mhm.
I remember there was a time when we didn't really look at hiring provisionals.
We did not. You're
And that's,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, it used to be, there were no provisional
Yeah.
teachers hired.
And now if we wouldn't have the provisionals, we wouldn't have adults or teachers in the classrooms.
I think last year I read a statistic that it was Virginia, 60% of the teachers that were hired were provisionals.
I would add one more thing that our school improvement goals include supporting teachers, and we also have mentoring for each of those teachers. And just for the record, I started out as a provisional teacher, so
Good to
do
know.
it.
Well, and I think a lot of that support is making sure the discipline is enforced in the classrooms as well as in the overall school itself.
I do have a question about going from provisional to licensed. Is there a way that it can be streamlined through pressure on the state or whatever to make it quicker to get people licensed?
We do have opportunities. We have something called iTeach, which
Right,
they
I have
can,
one of those,
they
yeah.
can go through it much more quickly and at their own pace, and they can finish in a year. So that's our fastest way rather than a university route. But the state recognizes the iTeach program, and it is, like I said, much faster. So that's probably the fastest route for anyone that wants to go.
But what I'm
continue.
talking about is those that are provisional teachers now, they're trying to get licensed, and it takes forever to work through the state bureaucracy to get licensed.
They've actually been quite responsive.
now?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
lately. And so their turnover is very fast as far as answers. So if you were to come to me and give me your coursework, and the state turns it over within a week to let us know whether or
Okay.
not they feel that you have the right courses to move forward.
Good.
So they're faster, and we have a connection that we can just call them to. And so it's been a great
So it's better than just a
relationship.
few years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Wright. Who do we have up next, Dr. Carroll?
Next is, we'll hear from Mr. Bill Bowen, Chief Financial Officer. He's going to review data released from the Department of Education on per pupil expenditures.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Carroll. This evening's presentation is an annual update on the per pupil expenditures. And this presentation highlights the strategic priority of supportive culture. And when we consider supportive culture in relation to per pupil expenditures, we ask ourselves an essential question. Are our financial resources and supports allocated effectively to ensure our students' success? So to fully understand per pupil expenditures, it's important first to consider both the source of the data and how the calculation is made. So the Code of Virginia requires all school divisions to submit their annual expenditures to the Department of Education by September 30. So the information we have on the expenditure side is FY24. This past September 30, we reported our FY25 expenditures. For the per pupil expenditure report, this calculation includes total operational expenditures, such as food service, summer school, and pre-kindergarten, but excludes things such as debt service and capital outlay. And this total is then divided by the average daily membership at the end of the school year. Now, Department of Education generates a lot of reports, and through those reports, they use a lot of different metrics. Sometimes it's not, preschool is not included, other times it is. You often hear me talk about March 31st ADM. That's the date that we use for funding and the count that we use for funding. However, this is on an end of year ADM. Now, just for clarity here on that, we did have in FY24 a difference between our March 31st ADM and our end of year ADM by about 50 students. So on this slide, here we see our per pupil expenditures compared amongst our regional peers using the most recent data available from the Virginia Department of Education. And for FY24, YCSD ranks 9th out of 9 in per pupil spending among our comparator group. And the range across the divisions is significant, with the highest expenditures $19,212 and the lowest at $14,826, a difference of $4,386. Now, last year, this was a similar table. Newport News was number 1, York County was number 9. However, that difference between 1 and 9 was only $2,954, a difference of $1,432. So we saw a significant increase in some of the schools this past year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's also worth noting that the difference between 8th and 9th, this is Williamsburg, James City County, and York County, it's $998. And so when you consider about the number of students, we have 13,000 students and $1,000, that would translate into $13 million additional dollars to make up that difference. Here on this slide, this is a 3-year comparison of expenditure data amongst our comparator group. And you can see here that what's consistent are a couple things. One, in years 23 and 24. So the green bar represents 22, the maroon 23, and the orange 24. You can see that there were some significant increases in 23 and 24 amongst many of the school divisions. What happened during this time is we saw our one-time money with ESSER funding, and in 23, 24, we saw the state allocation of one-time all-in funding. And so it just depends on how the school divisions allocated those funds for spend, but they seem to be pretty consistent. The other thing that's consistent here is if you look at York County, in each of the years, we were the lowest per pupil expenditure amongst our comparator group.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just because it's nearby, why isn't Poquoson listed?
So we've been using the same 9 school comparators since before I came. So Poquoson's never really been part of that comparator group, but I do show them on the next slide.
Okay.
They are. They have about 2,200 students.
Right.
Yes, so they're not comparison to our big 13,000 students. Yeah.
So this is a statewide comparison of per pupil expenditures. And here you can see highlighted in yellow are all of the schools in our region 2. And then on the second column, you'll see the state average there in green.
So I just want to point out the board, so our average per pupil expense here,
So we're on the the top of the fourth
there we
column.
are, 14,826. How many students are in Poquoson?
I would say about 2,200.
Okay, and that's their per pupil expense. So it's really, really good in terms of.
So there are 131 school divisions here listed, and out of 131, YCSD is 109th, which puts us in the low bottom quartile of all school divisions.
Now, for figuring this calculation, are all employee salaries included, not just what's dealing with the classroom?
Yes, ma'am. All salaries are included.
It's all operating expenses.
It's all operating
Right.
expenses minus the debt service and capital outlay.
Right, I understand. I've just been asked that by constituents several times.
But you can tell them that we are in the bottom quarter in spending and number 1 in performance. That's the best way I can see to put it.
And we'll
Yeah.
talk about that in the next couple of slides. So board members, as you know, that the niche ratings were recently released. And here's a comparison of the 3 that we've been working with or comparing ourselves to. Here now York County is number 1, then followed by Falls Church and then Arlington. However, Falls Church allocates about $10,939 more per student than YCSD, and Arlington $11,395 per student. And so we took a look at that statewide comparison again, however, highlighting now the niche ratings. And you can see Arlington and Falls Church falls at 2 and 3. And again, we're in the lower quarter of statewide expenditures.
Do we have any comparison regarding the NAEP scores? Have we been included in that at all?
No, ma'am. So how do we measure our effectiveness and return on investment? We do this by analyzing our per pupil spending and how that aligns with our academic results. And then we compare both of those to the state averages and then to our neighboring divisions. So this is our SOL results in English reading and writing. And at the top of the chart here, we see the state average at 74, and then we see York County at ranking number 1 at a score of 88. And then we see similar information data here with the English writing with the state average at 76, York County again number 1 at 89. And that kind of follows through the rest of the presentation here. We see York County again number 1, far exceeding the state averages in both math and science, as well as history. So in closing, I just want to add that YCSD continues to demonstrate a strong commitment to student achievement, despite operating with one of the lowest per pupil costs in the region, as well as the Commonwealth, among the lowest in the Commonwealth. And as I noted earlier, much of the financial support that we've seen from state and federal agencies here in recent years has come to us as one-time allocations or through grant opportunities. And those grant opportunities have been ESSER funds, all-in funds. We recently had a couple of awards with the security grant with Impact Aid student with severe disabilities. We received some funding for that. We've also applied numerous times, about a half a dozen times, for school construction funds. However, we haven't been very successful in that arena, but we have been successful in many of our opportunities, and it's due to the fact that we have a very strong grant writer, Dr. Stevenson and her team. Our grant accountants are doing a phenomenal job managing the process. However, with that process comes a significant administrative burden. There's applying for it, and though we receive many grants, there's many grants that we apply for we don't receive, but there's significant time invested to gather the information and to apply for those grants. And once we're awarded those funds, the administrative time of monitoring, requesting reimbursement, program reporting and financial reporting, and then through the audits. So while we are very, very thankful of the funding that we receive, truly to be effective in long-term planning for our priorities, a more stable and permanent funding source is really what is needed. So we're hoping, though, through this budget process that we'll see some of the shift from the one-time funding to more permanent funding. Our staff is currently working on their FY27 priorities for budget, and we'll continue to have these conversations as we go through that process. And that concludes my presentation for this evening. If you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, I'd like to just revisit 2 things. So when we talk about that example with WJCC, and not to pick on anybody, but the math is really easy at that 1,000 more students. So I certainly wouldn't say we need to have all 13 million of that, but we do operate in a constrained environment. There are things that we would like to do that we just can't, because it ends up being an opportunity cost. We have to cut something else in order to have something that we need or want. And you saw in the previous presentation where we're looking at a trend where we're going to need to give teachers more support. So it's that type of thing that in order to do that, we might have to give something else up. And so that's something just to remember when we're talking about giving a great education for the dollar, that, you know, it's not that just throwing money at things helps, but sometimes there are some things that we'd really like to do, but we just can't get there.
We need to do.
And need to do. And then the other thing, Mrs. Fairman, to your point on the NAEP, we do need to be careful about the NAEP because that's a state level measure. We only had, I think, 30 kids tested on the last one. So that can't be representative of our performance. The SOL is the best way to do that right now.
Because isn't NAEP just a random sample? Isn't it more of a random?
Yeah, they'll sample across the state and they'll, I think we'll pick, I think it was one classroom or 30.
moving in the year before.
Okay.
Last year, we had two schools and 50 students in each school.
Right,
But we're still not given individualized reports.
right.
We do not receive information as how our school division did. It's really a state-provided report. And it compares states across the United States. It's a way to compare progress across the United States, really.
Right.
And what the state's trying to do is calibrate the SOL test to the NAEP, and that has value. Absolutely.
Right.
Where does Virginia compare to on that report?
So that is where you've been hearing about the new changes to the state accountability and the cut scores, and the thing called the honesty gap. And so that's what they've been trying to do, is they're trying to increase the rigor of our standards so that we are more aligned. Over the years, we have seen some declines in Virginia performance across the other states, the other 49 states and localities. And so they're trying to adjust that score so that we're a little more rigorous, so that we are a little more above what this, because we're pretty much like 1 percentage point, like right below the NAEP, I think the average, where we used to be much higher.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the NAEP identified that while our SOLs were showing the state was doing well in comparison to the other 49 states, what was happening is that the SOL showed we were doing great, but the NAEP was showing we weren't.
That's the
And it
honest,
was,
that's what
Virginia was near the bottom, and actually a few years it was dead last.
correct. Well, and if you remember the presentation I provided in August or September, that's that first slide that I talked about, how the NAEP, you saw the decline over time. That's what that's about. Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, all right, who's up next?
All right, Mrs. Goodwin, Mr. Greg Dolak, Director of Maintenance and Facility Support, will now provide an overview of current safety and security procedures. Mr. Dolak.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Carroll. I appreciate the opportunity to come tonight to talk about the current safety procedures that are in place for the FY26 school year. I'd like to start off tonight by reviewing some of our current resources that we already have in place. Many of these have been in place for multiple years. We'll start off with our badge access system. Every employee in York County is assigned a badge. That badge actually can track their movements in and out of the building. We do not issue exterior door keys to our staff members. So this is a very secure way to have the perimeter of our buildings stay secure. If you lose a badge, that's a simple few keystrokes from our IT department, which can disable that badge and make it useless. Next on the list is the A-phone system. Our A-phone system is part of our building access control, where it allows our front office staff to communicate with potential visitors. And we can ascertain the need for them to be there. In some cases, we can determine if they are safe to let in the school. And that system, think of it as more like a commercial Ring camera. We also have our IdentiKid system, and that is our visitor management system. So when when visitors come to the building, they present their government-issued ID or driver's license. Once they do that, they are subjected to a 50-state sex offender search. And fortunately, we do not have many that we catch, but if we do, the Sheriff's Office and Commonwealth Attorney will address those situations, and it also not allows us to have them enter the building. Finally, our security camera system, we have built a very robust camera system that's been in place for many years now. So school staff, building administrators can access the system, as well as IT department members, school security, and also our school resource officers. What I'd like to focus on tonight is the new emergency terminology. This year, the school division adopted the I Love You Guys Foundation Standard Response Protocol. I want to make clear, though, the standard response protocol is very similar to the current procedures and practices that we've been doing for at least 15 years. One of the reasons we decided to go with this is because our 911 dispatch center is a regional dispatch center. So they serve City of Poquoson, City of Williamsburg, County of York, and James City County. Those agencies or jurisdictions have also adopted this program. That way, if we have an emergency situation where someone calls 911, the dispatcher doesn't have to try to figure out what county I'm talking to and what school division. So that helps with consistency. This summer at Leadership Academy, we trained all of the administrative staff, and then we branched out in the weeks before school and trained all teaching staff, paraeducators, custodians, bus drivers, maintenance staff, and then also food service workers. Then additionally, we went one step further and we had the teachers provide the students with an information session and a video within the first week of school. And then finally, we followed it up with resources that we provided to the family on our division website and through the division digest.
Were substitutes given that training?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So our standard response protocols, there's 5 actions that we're going to talk about tonight. And if you look at the first 3, those go in, I won't say severity, but they rise in urgency. So we'll start off with hold. Hold is a short-term action that's really what I like to say puts a pause on the activity in the building. The most common time we would use this would be for a student or a staff member medical emergency. And that allows us to clear the hallways, allows for first responders to gain easy access. They don't have to fight through a crowd. And then it also gives the person going through the crisis some dignity. They can keep that private. This, like I said, is not going to be more than 5 to 10 minutes. If the bell would ring in the middle of this, kids stay put, but they can continue teaching. The administrator at the end of the hold will come across the PA system and announce that the hold has been released. So the next action is secure. And as I said earlier, we want common language. Last year and previous years, secure was referred to as a modified lockdown, if you ever heard that term. The nice thing about this is having secure is a totally different word. If you're in a crisis situation and you hear modified lockdown and you miss the word modified, that's a totally separate set of actions that you have to take. This eliminates that. It's clearer language. So what we're looking at for a secure is a situation outside one of our buildings where we don't feel it's safe for students and staff to be outside. More often than not, the sheriff's department is going to notify us through dispatch to say that there's been an activity in the area, criminal activity. We don't have the suspects. We would like everyone to come inside. So when that happens, we are going to possibly limit staff, visitors from leaving the building and coming into the building. Also, the sheriff's department will provide us with a deputy, especially at the elementary level, to help deal with the situation. The secondary schools have their SROs and they can start, and depending on the urgency, they can follow up with additional deputies. We would expect a secure to last anywhere from 30 minutes to a few hours, depending. And we've had secure situations in the past that have lasted several hours. The most urgent situation next is a lockdown, and we're all fairly familiar with what a lockdown is. That's going to be when there is an imminent threat inside the building. Now, in that situation, the school obviously is going to be most aware of that, and they will make the initiation to put the school into lockdown. So once that happens, all interior and exterior doors are locked. Students and staff go to a safe location, and they stay in that location until they are told by the sheriff's department. So in the first 2 actions that we talked about, hold and secure, the building administrator calls the end to that. But in an actual lockdown, we're looking for the sheriff's department to put an end to that situation or actually call a stop to it. And that could be 2 ways. One is the threat has, been eliminated and then we can go about our business. The other would be an actual door-to-door visitation by law enforcement to instruct the kids on what to do next. Evacuation is the next step. We're going to talk about 2 different types of evacuations. There's going to be a safe haven relocation evacuation and then a reunification. So I'm going to talk about safe haven right now. So our setup in the school division is every school has a safe haven. For the most part, our safe haven is the high school of the attendance zone. So for example, Magruder Elementary would be Bruton High School. We would do a safe haven evacuation if we had a situation occur where we would not be able to send the kids home. For example, if we lost power, lost water, had a sewer problem. In a lot of those situations, we may just opt to dismiss early. But if we had a situation where we had a gas leak and we would not be able to put the kids back in the building and the weather wasn't great, we would then revert them to a safe haven location. And then once that happens, support staff from the school board office and then the school staff will work with transportation and the school board office to determine, do we send the kids home on the bus or are we gonna have parents pick up or a combination of both? And then finally, the last action that we will talk about tonight is shelter. So primarily what we're talking about here is severe weather, tornado, situations like that. We would look at a shelter for also possibly an earthquake situation where we'd want to do that. All right, so we're going to talk about reunification. We have also employed the I Love You Guys standard reunification method. We did that about 4 years ago. And we actually have set up with community partners in the county 4 locations for each attendance zone where we would have a reunification location. We don't make those public because we want to keep them as secure as possible in the event something happens. The school board office and operations employees are gonna staff that center because if you can imagine, if we're in a reunification situation, that's because something very serious has happened at a building. We don't wanna put that stress on the staff and the students, so we will have people come in to do that. One of the things that we're particularly proud of is we have a reunification trailer that's ready because as I said earlier, our locations are not school sites. So we have a trailer that is available that has everything that we need, that we can run that operation out of the trailer. Now, reunification, obviously families are gonna play a big part in our reunification. In some incidents, as we said, students may need to be reunified off-site. YCSD, we are working constantly with Fire and Life Safety and the Sheriff's Department and any other applicable agency to determine when it's safe to reunite. So one thing we want families to know is these situations take time. And we want to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row before we start releasing students to their parents. So families in an emergency situation, we realize this is difficult, but we want them to stay at home until such time that we notify the reunification center is open. We do realize that's gonna be very difficult, but if we've looked at past situations at schools, when you have families come to the school where the crisis actually is, you're putting an unneeded burden on law enforcement and fire and life safety. So that's actually for the safety of the kids and first responders. We'd like you to stay informed. Please know that the school division will work very hard to keep everyone updated. And the best way to do that is through the social media channels and the YCSD app. We'll be able to get those communications directly. And then finally, be ready. When we make the decision to have you come to the reunification center, you're going to need to bring your ID. If for whatever reason you're not going to be able to pick up your child, make sure that the person that's on the pickup list is the person picking up and they'll need to have their ID also. We're very concerned with reuniting the right people with the right parents. Talk for a little bit about safety drills. There are state requirements for our safety drills. Our lockdown drills, we do 2 during the first 20 days, and our kindergarten and preschool students do not participate in those. We do 2 more in the second semester. And I'd like to pause here and thank the Sheriff's Department for their continued support in providing us additional deputies to drill with us. So this does a couple of things. One is it gets the kids used to what might happen in an actual emergency. And then it also gives those deputies an opportunity to get into our buildings and get the layout of the buildings in the event there's an emergency. Obviously, we do fire drills. We do 1 a week during September and then 1 a month after that. And then we also do a tornado and an earthquake drill yearly. One of the drills that not many people know about, and I'd like to take a minute to brag, is the VOPEC Surrey Power Station drill. So for those of you who don't know at home, Surrey Power Station is a nuclear power plant in Surrey across the James River. That power plant affects our school division in the Bruton zone because 4 of our schools are actually in the emergency protective zone. Because of that, we work closely with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management and also FEMA to have plans in place in the event something happens. So YCSD has continually received high praise for our participation in the school-specific exercise. We had one this past July, and the gentleman that was the Region 3 FEMA director attended that and went and told the Fire and Life Safety crew that that was one of the best ones that he had seen And what they'll do is they'll throw situations at you and you have to respond in real time. Tab, High, and Grafton Complex serve as shelters for the public. Grafton Complex is going to be our shelter for the Bruton Zone students, should we have to evacuate, and then Tab High would serve as a shelter for the general public. Let's move on to school resource officers and school security officers. So we've had school resource officers in place for many years now. What we haven't had, it's a little newer to us, are school security officers. We are beginning our third year of school security officers in the division. We are beginning our second year with our supervisor of school safety and emergency management, Mr. Kyle Hahn. Those of you who may not know, Kyle came to us after 30 years with the Yorktown Sheriff's Department, retiring as captain of Uniform Patrol. But more importantly, before that, he served an extended period of time as captain of community services. It was during that time that Kyle actually developed a lot of the procedures and programs that we have in place today. So we are extremely fortunate to have him. I'd like to say as of right now, we are fully staffed. And we have a school security officer trainer, and that is Mr. Hahn. So the Department of Criminal Justice requires that school security officers be certified. They have a certification program. One of the biggest challenges for us was getting these people trained. They have 60 days within date of hire to be trained. Mr. Hahn taking that course and becoming a trainer has helped us bring those people on and then get them trained as soon as possible. And we've also worked out some agreements with surrounding areas that if they have people they need to train, we'll do some back and forth. And then one of the things we did this year for our school security officers is they are all certified in the MANT system, and that is a de-escalation system. So we are fortunate that we were able to work with special ed department and get that training for our folks. Switch up to 900 megahertz radios. You may have heard us talk before about 800 megahertz radios. Those are the radios of the Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, and there are 2 in each building. The 900 megahertz radios are another frequency that the schools use. This year, we were fortunate. We purchased 300 radios. We re-outfitted the entire school fleet. This allows easier communication during a crisis. Myself, Mr. Hahn, senior levels of the community services and the fire and the Sheriff's Department have those radios. So when we arrive on scene, we can communicate directly with the principal and any other key staff members that have those radios. Also like to touch on our Valcom PA system. I'm sure you're aware that we have been installing that system in our schools over the past 5 years. We have just begun the installation of our last school, which is York High, which we hope to have that done around Christmas time or shortly after. One of the nicest things about the Valcom system is the automated safety messaging that it provides. So all of the actions with the I love you guys, the hold, secure, lockdown, et cetera, those are all programmed into our PA system. So in the past, before this system, if we had a lockdown, that would require someone in the front office to get on the PA and make an announcement. You can imagine how hard that would be in a stressful situation to do that. Now, they can literally press a button or flip a switch and it's an automated message. So they can actually start taking protective measures while the school's being notified. And then it also provides external speakers at all of our buildings. In the past, we had probably 2/3 of our building had external speakers. They will all have external speakers now. And the nice thing about that is if we call a secure at a school, the external speakers will notify the people that are outside and let them know they need to come in immediately. So I'd like to finish with the additional measures that we do to help provide the safest environment possible. We do annual building inspections. So every year we have an operations team that goes through the building with the principals and we look for maintenance deficiencies, but we also look and try to address any safety issues, whether or not we have a door that's not operating properly or we have a situation that we feel we can improve. That's noted and then we look to do that. We do school safety audits in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department and the school principals. We are very fortunate that our fire department inspects our buildings yearly. They provide a very robust inspection process, and then the maintenance department works with the principal and the school to address any deficiencies. And then finally, one of the new things that we've started doing recently is coordination meetings with the Sheriff's Department. You've heard me say several times, we enjoy a very robust partnership with the Sheriff's Department, and these meetings are a great forum to talk about things that we can do, and then also a chance to debrief on situations that we've had, so we can talk about how we can be better and how they can be better. So those are all the slides I have for you tonight. Are there any questions?
Great, thank you.
No, thank you, I appreciate it.
I will extend a praise. I was fortunate enough to be touring York Middle School in September, and I think it was, what was it? Yeah, it was in September, and I got to sit in on the debriefing, the fire drill. And that was amazing. I mean, just to see how on it they were, looking at what worked well, what didn't, all of the things, all the Ts crossed, Is dotted. It was very impressive.
Yeah, we are very fortunate that we have that relationship, and we continually, I mean, there is not a day that goes by that we're not in contact with someone from the fire department or the sheriff's department, just over operational type things.
Yeah, it was really
great.
well done.
And board members, I'd add a couple of things. You mentioned the 900 megahertz radios and the Valcom at York High. Both of those, we received security grants from the state, so they were either paid for or subsidized by those grants. And that's from the work from Dr. Stevenson. Also, you mentioned the standard response protocol. And our students aren't just in our schools, they're also in other places. And New Horizons switched to that process on October 10th. They did their training on the 10th, so on the 11th, they went active with that. So they are doing the same process. So I thought that was important to raise.
Right. All right, we'll move on to our next presentation. Dr. Carroll, who do we have up next?
Thank you, Mrs. Goodwin. We will now have Dr. Aaron Butler, Director of Student Services, and Ms. Lisa Beasley, Coordinator of Testing and Accountability, to discuss a draft for the 26-27 student calendar.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Carroll, thank you for this opportunity this evening to present to you the 2026-27 draft school calendar. Per Virginia Code, school divisions are required to develop school calendars with a minimum of 180 instructional days or 990 instructional hours. In addition, school divisions must ensure that there are 140 instructional hours per course for high school credit-bearing classes, 560 instructional hours in the 4 core classes at the middle school level, and 680 instructional hours in the 4 academic disciplines at the elementary school level. Back in 2019, the General Assembly amended Virginia Code to allow school divisions who had not previously been able to start school before Labor Day to receive a waiver so they could start 14 calendar days before Labor Day. The provision was that the Friday before Labor Day had to be closed for students and for instruction. And so the calendar tonight does align with all state requirements for the calendar. Just for some historical knowledge, when the school division shifted from a pre-Labor Day to from a post-Labor Day to a pre-Labor Day schedule, Labor Day fell late in that year, so that minimized the impact on summer schedules. In addition, there has been a reduction in early dismissal days, and that was from feedback from our families and also from staff, particularly when it came to the instructional impact and childcare arrangements with our families. Some of the benefits of shifting our calendar and some of the things that we've done has been we've gained 12 to 15 hours of instruction at every level, which equates to 2 or more instructional days. And so these are some of the changes that we have made over the last couple of years when it comes to the calendar. Back in March, we were able to give a survey out to families, and we had a decent representation. We had 2,245 responders, and of that, 65% were our families here in York County. We have about 18% of our employees, and then we have some employees who have children in the system. That was 11%. And we had 4% of our students that respond. And we use a variety of methods. We use text messages we're sending out on our school website as well as our school newsletters. When we were eliciting feedback from our stakeholders, option A was one of the questions we asked if we started 2 weeks before Labor Day, beginning on August the 24th, and then we would have an end date of June the 9th. The other option, option B, was that we would start on August the 31st and we would end on June the 16th. you can see from the results from the feedback survey, 59% of respondents did prefer option A, where we would start 2 weeks before Labor Day, beginning on August 24th, and that we would end on June 9th. Because summer is always an impact for our families and students, we also asked a question about preference. So we asked if they would prefer an 11-week summer break with fewer student holidays during the school year. We also asked would they prefer a 10-week summer break with fewer additional student holidays during the year, or a 9-week summer holiday with more student holidays spread out throughout the year. And so while there was a little bit of dissonance when you look at the survey results, 41% of the respondents did say they preferred a 10-week summer break with fewer additional student holidays during the school year. One of the considerations that the committee has looked at for the past several years has been the impact on winter break. And so there was a strong desire that we do maintain the 2 weeks of winter break that allows families to use that time, and also a time for reset for our students and staff. We are part of a larger regional committee, and so Mrs. Beasley will talk about that, but making sure that we can align with our regional programs, as many of our students do participate in Governor's School and New Horizons. And then making sure we have breaks during the year to support well-being for students and for staff. At this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Beasley, who will go through the metrics and the decision we made for the calendar.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. So as Dr. Butler mentioned, we do have both a local calendar committee and a regional calendar committee. The goal for our division calendar committee, the driving principle, is to develop specifically a school calendar which best supports student academic success and meets state requirements. On our committee are teachers from all three levels, families, members, building administrators, as well as our assessment compliance coordinators, school counselors, and then school board office staff. That team came together and met once last spring after we had the results of the survey, and then met again once this fall. Our regional calendar committee does include representatives from Hampton, Newport News, Poquoson, Williamsburg, James City County, Gloucester, and New Horizons. We meet several times throughout the year depending on the needs of the school divisions. And ironically, we actually have a meeting tomorrow where we're gonna actually start to think about our 27-28 calendars, if you can believe it or not. So what this slide does is it compares our current year calendar, so it compares the calendar of the 2025-2026 school year as compared to the draft calendar for the 2026-2027 school year. I do want to make a note that these are key dates that we have here on the slide, but the full draft calendar for the 26-27 school year is available in board docs for our community. So you can see this year we started school on August 25th, and the recommendation for next year is that we start school on August 24th. The key change and the key difference between this year's calendar and next year's calendar is that Labor Day. So Labor Day this year was on Monday, September 1st, and Labor Day next year is on September 7th. So that is where we see the difference in the calendar, and that's why it's a key year where we can make that shift to being 14 days before Labor Day without it having a significant impact on the calendar. You can see actually that there's strong consistency then through the rest of the calendar. Thanksgiving break would remain 3 days. Winter break would remain those 2 full weeks and 3 weekends, as Dr. Butler mentioned. And spring break would remain the first full week of April, which is something as a region we've consistently done over the past few years. So the calendar for the 26-27 school year will be on the agenda for approval, not during tonight's meeting, but during the November 24th regular session. And at this time, Dr. Butler and I are available for questions. Any questions from the board?
I have a question. I do have one, and I looked at the overall, and I brought this up before. Is there any way that we could have, especially since we're coming up on the 250th anniversary, and all of those celebrations for next year, getting Yorktown Day off, since that is a school day? I know in the past we used to.
Yeah, so we did consider it. We met as a small committee and then contacted our local government officials to see if there would be any events specifically on Yorktown Day to see what the impact might be. They indicated to us that the events were going to mainly consist the weekend prior to Yorktown Day and that they planned on doing most of the events on Saturday and Sunday.
Really? Okay.
So we wouldn't really need that day off.
And that was the
specifically.
conversation we had as we were making that decision to contact those local officials and see what the impact might be. Because we did recognize, and the our calendar committee, it was actually a discussion in our calendar committee about if there was gonna be a more significant impact, then yes, we did need to look at potentially making that a student and or staff holiday.
Yeah, because I know in the past, it's always been actually on Yorktown Day for the parade. I know the ambassador from France and staff come down from Washington. And I imagine it's probably gonna even be bigger this year. So they're definite that it's gonna be over the weekend, not on actual Yorktown Day.
The feedback we were provided was that it was going to be the weekend.
Which makes sense, I think, because a lot of people just can't take off necessarily for that day. If they're not given that day off, I mean, it would be hard. So to have it on the weekend, you're gonna get more people involved. So that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I think we're up to policy discussion.
Yes, ma'am. We have, as you know, we bring a whole policy section to you on a quadrennial basis. And it is now time to review policy section C. And so Ms. Berry is with us to review the proposed changes to policy section C.
Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Carroll, tonight before you is Policy C, General School Administration for discussion. There are 15 restatements, so there's no changes other than anything, that's a change allowed under the policy. And there are 3 that have revisions. The 3 that have revisions, we have CBA, qualifications and duties for the superintendent. And these revisions are due to state code and to align with VSBA. The next one is CBG, evaluation of superintendent. And the changes there are to update to be compliant with Virginia code, as well as the guidelines for uniform performance standards and evaluation criteria for superintendents that the Virginia Board of Education puts out. The third policy is CLA, reporting acts of violence and child abuse, which is now substance abuse. And that is a complete rewrite of the policy, and we have opted to use the VSBA version to align with the law. And I would be open for any questions.
Anybody have any specific questions?
Which ones are specifically, you said not only Virginia law, but VSBA?
CBA
Last 2.
and CLA.
Okay, thank you.
We good? All right, I think that was our last presentation. All right, thank you for being here this evening, everybody. We'll have a break before our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. upstairs in the boardroom. This meeting is adjourned.